This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
All righty, there he is. How you feeling, my man? You feeling good?
I'm feeling good because my two favorite songs in the rotation right now are the Cutter's Edge theme and the Sports Grill theme. Those are two bangers to lead into my segment.
Yes.
That is part of what makes this my favorite
These are
segment
facts.
of any kind that I do all week.
These are just facts. I got to admit that Cutter's Edge, that one gets me every single time, bro.
It's so out of sync with like what I mean, whatever I don't think of when I think of landscaping. I don't normally think right. Absolute head banging, thrashing. But like that, I would listen to that to fire myself up for almost anything. That really, I'm ready to go. And then I don't sleep on the Sports Grill theme either.
Of course, no, you can't sleep on the Sports Grill theme. You got to always be on top of that. By the way, you got to be happy the way Tua played. Tua played well. Yeah. If only Tyreek and or Sherfield would actually hang on to a goddamn touchdown there in the beginning of the game. And Braylon Sanders, for Christ's sake, run, young man, run. Stop. It's like, I was joking around in the postgame show. You know how you look at your car mirror on the side, it says objects appear closer than they really see. I think he had that on his shield or something, and he thought the football was a lot closer when it sailed like 10 yards behind him because Tua threw it in stride. Do you remember the play on 4th down against the Bills earlier in the season when he split the safeties?
Oh, yeah.
Same play.
Yeah. I've got a lot
that was the same exact play that they were trying, and they had it, but the youngin had a brain fart, and so he should have got 4 touchdowns in that game.
I've got a lot of Tyreek Hill, so the ball that pretty much, I think any great receiver would say the same thing. If they get both hands on a ball, even if anything would have been exceptional about the catch, like they should haul it in. Tyreek Hill is that caliber of player. But it was just like overall from a fantasy perspective, I know a loss, like any loss, is going to be disappointing in real life if you're a Dolphins fan. Huge sigh of relief, huge sigh of relief, because they obviously got a few things figured out. They pounded the ball on the ground. Mostert looked great, and that is going to be one important counter. Like if teams are going to drop a whole bunch of defenders into the middle of the field to clutter things up, knowing where Tua and Mike McDaniel want to put the ball generally, you're going to have to be able to run against that, right? Like if defenses are going to give themselves a lighter front at the snap of the football, you've got to be able to get 5 yards, 6 yards every single time they do it. And Mostert, I thought, looked exceptional. And you're running like that, and it's going to free some stuff up for your elite receivers. So that was great to see. It was just overall, it was. Again, I'm sure you guys are disappointed as fans, but from a purely fantasy perspective, it was a huge relief to see Tua get back on track.
Yeah, no, I actually feel good about the team because I thought they played well. I thought actually McDaniel screwed up that game. He should have run a lot more on those short yardage situations. The going for the 2-point conversion so early was dumb. There was just things that really could have helped out the team, but unfortunately they couldn't get it done. All right, you guys got some questions here. You got some fantasy questions, some playoff fantasy questions, because the playoffs are starting now. They should be starting in most leagues. Send them in here on the YouTube chat board, of course, and you can send them in on Twitter at Big O Show, on the Welt and Rayom text line at 855-912-1056. That's 855-912-1056. And, of course, you can send in your questions with a super chat. It'll stand out. Or on Cash App or Venmo at Cash Big O Show. That's an easy way to see it at Cash Big O Show. So let me ask you something. Would you even gamble with Tyler Algiers in a week like this? No, right?
Well, listen, I mean, everybody's got, ideally, if you're in the playoff semifinals, you have better options than a guy who's in a job share for Atlanta. I get that. but I don't want to diminish what Algier's been doing. He's a guy that I was really bullish on coming into the season. You think about the scenario here. He's a talented rookie at like 1,800 yards, total yards last year at BYU, like something like 23 touchdowns. Like he was a really good college player who stepped into a situation where it's just like, an aging kick returner is the running back, right? So like there was an immediate opportunity here for Algier to establish himself certainly as the running back of the future, if not the running back of the present. And then he, a week like that against New Orleans, he delivers 17 carries, 139 yards, a touchdown. He's now up to 5 yards per carry on the season. Like there's just not many rookies that are running any better than he does. It's really fun to watch too, because he just pinballs off people, right? Like I don't know exactly the missed tackle totals are, but I know he came into the week averaging something like 3.2 yards after contact per carry. He's been great. He's been really, really fun to watch. The matchups ahead for him, it's Baltimore on the horizon. That's not great. And then it's Arizona after that. We just saw Latavius Murray go off against Arizona. So I think he needs to be on a roster. Obviously he would probably need something to happen to Cordero Patterson to really fall into a situation where he's getting, 25, potentially even 30 touches. But as it is, we know that Atlanta just wants to run, almost without regard to game situation. They're going to run the ball, like probably twice as often as they throw it. They're in the Desmond Ridder era now, right? So like even in a game where they were trailing early, they still only let Ridder throw the ball 26 times. So they're gonna run the ball all day, and Algier is a big part of it.
Okay, this is an interesting question from Jason Thomas. Should I give up on Mark Andrews?
Man,
The thing is, when do you get Lamar back? If you get Lamar back in the next week or two, then you've got to hang on to him, because the second Lamar comes back, Mark Andrews becomes valuable at that time. You got something. I get it now with Huntley and company. That's not going to get you anywhere. I understand that. Even though you would figure the tight end would be the higher percentage passes, that he would at least still get action with Huntley. So what do you do there?
Yeah, I will remind people that part of the argument on behalf of Andrews over the last couple of weeks is that Huntley was great with him last year. Like Andrews' numbers with Huntley were spectacular. I think the real problem with Andrews is he's playing through some stuff, right? Like he's banged up and clearly not playing at the level that he was early in the season. But this is now 7 straight games for him in which he hasn't topped 63 yards. Like I think that's his high watermark. The problem here is that who are you going to get? Like who are you going to get that you trust at tight end? There's nobody out there. Juwan Johnson is scoring a lot, but he's not catching a lot of passes. Like this is just sort of a fluky touchdown situation. Like we're gonna look at his numbers next year and just scream touchdown regression, and we're gonna be right. There's nobody out there who's available in all likelihood who's just piling up stats. The one name I guess I could think of that's available in about 50% of Yahoo leagues is fake tight end Taysom Hill, right? He's doing everything on the field except playing tight end, but that is how they list him. So that's where he's eligible in fantasy. He's getting a couple of pass attempts each game. He's getting like 6-7 carries each game, and they like him near the goal line. So I suppose if you wanted to go with Taysom Hill and you saw him as a high upside guy, that would be fine. I know I haven't been ranking Mark Andrews as my number 1 or 2 tight end in the last few weeks because I think we're there.
What are you going to do?
I think we've arrived at a point where TJ Hawkinson certainly is seeing a lot more action than he is, but we do presumably have Lamar coming back this week, and Lamar coming back with a matchup against Atlanta. That's relatively friendly. So Andrews is going to start for most people. Congratulations to you if you've actually made it to the playoff semifinals and you used a second round pick.
He must have another guy. He must have another guy that must be pretty decent.
Yeah, you're probably a team that has like Josh Jacobs, or you've got one of the other guys that is keying people. But
pick up Mike Gesicki. He's getting a lot of play.
Yeah, well, Mike is a perfect example of the dreadful landscape at tight end, right? There's just not a lot of options out there. You really just want to start somebody new because you're tired of seeing 30 or 40 yards from the same old guy. You'd rather get your 30 yards from a new face, I suppose.
The worst part is if Gesicki was in a offense that fitted him, that dude, he'd be killing it, man.
Yeah,
all right,
most teams use their tight end not as a
I know.
tight end at all, right? Like most teams have a guy that they just run out there and he's basically a slot receiver and he never blocks, and that like they're just not doing it with Gesicki.
It's
I
a thing here.
get it.
Here you
Yeah.
got to block somehow. All right, Tesh Patel is asking Pacheco or Najee for next week.
Yeah, pretty annoying if you're a Pacheco manager to see Jerick McKinnon scoring all these touchdowns. I mean, McKinnon's a really good player, right? And it's a little bit of a backfield mix. It is encouraging that Pacheco saw 17 carries. We like that. Pacheco's just got such a good matchup against Seattle. Like we saw the Panthers just run all over right through Seattle a couple weeks ago. We saw Christian McCaffrey just do it, right? Like that's about as friendly as it gets. Of course, Najee also has a really friendly matchup. He's got the Raiders coming up. He hasn't reached 100 yards all year. He's ceding more and more work to Jaylen Warren. His fantasy lines have been saved by touchdowns. And there's a pretty good chance that he finds the end zone against the Raiders too. But I think my ranks are going to actually have Pacheco. Like that's a blow up matchup. I still like his usage, and he's the guy who's tied to the offense that's scoring like 30, 35 points a week, right? So I'm gonna go slightly into Pacheco.
All right, so let me ask you something. Desperation. You got to make some moves going into the playoffs. KJ Osborne was pretty good last year. This year, not so good. But this past week, he blew up 10 receptions, 157 yards, and a touchdown. KJ Osborne is not necessarily owned by a lot of people. Is that a move you would risk in this week?
People probably don't need me to explain that the circumstances in week 15 were highly unusual for KJ Osborne, right? Like falling behind by 5 touchdowns and then actually coming back. So he sees 16 targets. That's clearly not repeatable because they're not going to be in that situation again. It's not exactly what the Vikings want to do. I do think that he's put himself on the same plane, the same fantasy tier as Adam Thielen. Thielen is obviously a guy who's kind of on the back nine of his career. Still, scored a touchdown this past week. He's a good player, but he's not like vintage Adam Thielen. And Osborne has now found the end zone in back-to-back weeks. Again, you're not going to see another 16 target game, but I do think he's a useful player. I want to say he's got Green Bay in week 17 too, which is a really friendly matchup. That's a garbage defense. So he's got a little bit of appeal there. The guys that I would put ahead of him on waivers at that position this week, Jahan Dotson is still out there in over 80% of Yahoo leagues, and that kid could be a star someday. He's now seen 15 targets over the last 2 weeks, had a touchdown, obviously, against the Giants, also had that huge field flipping 60-yard catch, contested catch. Just a really talented player. He scored 6 times in 9 games. So Dotson, I think, is more interesting. And for a week, I think that Marquise Goodwin is more interesting too.
I was going to ask you about Marquise Godwin.
Yeah, we know that Tyler Lockett's going to miss at least 1 week with that fractured finger. Goodwin isn't, he's not a perfect player, but he'd already been seeing the field a bunch, and Lockett's absence is going to free up like 7 to 9 targets. A lot of that flows to Goodwin, and whatever you think of him, he's one of the fastest men in the NFL. He's got
Olympian. Talent, bro. He can play, dude. Ever since watching him at San Francisco, he's a kid and he can make some things happen. So let me ask you, Zach Moss, where are we with Zach Moss?
Yeah, I wish he were better. It's kind of how I feel, right? Like Jonathan Taylor. Oh man. First of all, you feel terrible that Jonathan Taylor has the high ankle sprain, probably going to miss the rest of the year.
Terrible for me, bro. I had a 3-man parlay, and I had Cook, Jefferson with the overs of which was whatever yards, and Taylor. Brother, Taylor goes out right at the beginning, and Jefferson and Cook easily achieved their numbers. And I'm like, dude, Taylor would have gotten his. I would have.
You could not have come up with better circumstances for Jonathan Taylor than a multi-score lead, right? Like they win that game, obviously, if they can just feed Jonathan Taylor and he can dominate on the ground. And that is exactly what would have happened. That's how Jeff Saturday wants to play. So it would have been the game of the year for Jonathan Taylor, but unfortunately he goes down early. what you saw from Moss is what you can expect. Inefficient running, nothing explosive. He's not like a creator out there, right? Like if it's blocked for him, he can usually get it. But 24 carries for 81 yards. That's about, he got stonewalled at the goal line on that first series. He also had a couple of funny moments where, like, how last night Brian Robinson like gets himself in a pile and then the pile just kind of moves downfield and his legs keep churning and all that. Like Zach Moss had a couple moments where he got himself in a pile and the pile kept moving, but then Zach Moss was on the ground and the pile left him and kept going. Like you don't see that very often. But he didn't fumble, which Deion Jackson did. So I think you can expect that Zach Moss is going to get the early down work. Deion Jackson will get some of the passing down work. I don't know that they fully trust Deion Jackson anymore. I think it's probably Moss, but that's not super. The one thing that I will say in Moss's favor is that he's got the Chargers coming up, and that has been, for the balance of the season, that has been an extremely friendly matchup for opposing running backs. So maybe he can find the end zone in that one.
All right, what else you got going on Yahoo so folks can check you out, my friend?
Yeah, we're going to have a full pickups podcast today on the Yahoo Fantasy Football Forecast. And then this week, Fantasy Football Live, because of the holiday, we're going to move it to Thursday. So we're going to be on basically in prime time, 7 Eastern, just ahead of the Thursday night game between the Jags and the Jets. Should be a lot of fun.
All right, check it out. And make sure you follow him on Twitter at Andy Behrens. Andy, as always, thank you, my friend. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Big O. Good luck, everybody.
You got it. There you go. 7 great locations. Go to sportsgrill.com. Listen, you got some Monday Night Football action tonight. You got the Panthers. Aren't they on tonight? Yeah, the Bruins. You got a lot of things to watch. Get on down to Sports Grill, man. Enjoy it. And don't forget, today is Monday. So the $7 single smash burger is going on. Tuesdays, $2 tacos, chicken, beef, and fish. And Wednesdays, the kids eat free with the purchase of an adult entree. Sports Grill Fantasy Football Zone.